I'll tell you what exists. The excitement for Back to the Future. The 40th anniversary of this fabulous film is this July. It was released and initially set in the year 1985. I saw it in its original run. Thank you very much. The film follows protagonist Marty McFly, who attempts to return to his hometown after accidentally traveling back to the year 1955. It didn't seem that far away back then. He's in a DeLorean. I've actually been in a DeLorean. See how I'm excited about this film. It's regarded as one of the greatest films ever made to this day. Joining us to tell us more about it and his new book, Why We Love Back to the Future, is Houston area writer, TV host, and radio personality Brad Gilmore. Brad, welcome to Hello Houston. Thank you for dressing up. You look fabulous.
Oh, you know what? I even have DeLoreans on my tie here. You know, I wanted to make sure I went all the way. I really appreciate the invitation. I love talking about Back to the Future and why we all love it.
You know, a lot of people don't know that Eric Stoltz was first choice for the lead.
Not only was he first choice, Eric Stoltz was cast to be Marty McFly. They shot on the movie for 7 to 8 weeks. They were getting to the point of the film where they were wrapping up and they were talking about what their next project was. And then Robert Zemeckis, the director of the movie, showed some of the dailies to Steven Spielberg. And Spielberg goes, you know, you're just not getting the laughs that you want. And they made a crazy decision to recast their main lead in the movie 8 weeks into production. And they had to fire Stoltz and hire Michael J. Fox.
Well, I read, before we get off of that, that Stoltz looked at this movie as more of a serious throwback to the past, and that's why that Spielberg was like, he's too serious.
Well, he was playing it as if it were really happening, and if you went, he all due respect to Eric Stoltz, great actor, but he had people call him Marty. He was very method on the set. You know, you refer to him always as Marty. And but you know what? If you went back in time and you were stuck there and your mom started to come on to you a little bit, you might be playing it really serious too, you know, instead of the jokes that Michael J. Fox did it with.
But when did you start to really love, Back to the Future? That's pretty niche in that you saw the movie, how you look kind of young.
What's the hook?
Yeah, like when did you get into this movie?
So I got in the movie real young. I saw it on television one time, and it just captured my imagination. I'm the youngest of 4, and my oldest brother and I are 23 years apart. So we don't have a lot in common, culturally speaking, right, over the times that we grew up. But Back to the Future was something we bonded with. My dad is in his 80s. He grew up in the 50s. So for me, it was almost a connection to my family in a lot of ways, which I think is where this movie first came to be. Bob Gale, the writer of Back to the Future, co-creator, found his dad's yearbook and said, oh, wow, I didn't know that my dad was the president of his graduating class. I would have never had anything to do with the president of my graduating class, and they went to the same high school. So we thought, I wonder what would happen if I went to high school with my parents. Would we be friends or not? And that was the germ of the idea that birthed Back to the Future, the franchise, and kind of, the family element has always been something that stuck with me.
That's amazing because this is your second book about Back to the Future. How did you do 2 books on Back to the Future? Yeah. How much content can you really have, Brad?
Well, look, I went all the way back to the past, future, present, all through the space-time continuum. Well, what's great about these movies is they continue to find an audience, and there continue to be spin-off projects around it. There was a musical that launched in 2020, actually right before the pandemic, in the West End in London, and then it's transferred over here to the United States. I got to see it on Broadway back in 2023. It's coming to Houston, I believe, this summer. And there's an animated series. There's a ride. There's a comic book. There's a video game. There's so much about Back to the Future that you can really dive into. And that's what I wanted to do with this one. Coming up on this 40th anniversary, I wanted to really get into why we actually love this movie and what connects us to it.
And so I guess, for you were mentioning how it really ties back to your family and your roots and that connection it brought to you. Why do you think it's still such a cultural phenomenon across the board?
Quentin Tarantino regarded it as a perfect movie. And I think when people see the film, it's hard to find a flaw in it. And I think it explores themes that we're all curious by, not only the family factor, but a time machine. Who hasn't thought about, if I could only go back and change this? Yeah. And that's what the film hits on. Crispin Glover's character, George McFly, if I would have stood up to the bully, would my life have been different? Well, it turns out that if you do stand up for yourself, maybe your life turns out different. I think those themes of time travel and just wondering what would have been is what makes people keep coming back to it.
Well, clearly it's dated. But I don't think it's one of those movies. Well, I'm dated too.
Your opinion.
Relax, Brad.
It's your opinion.
So, I don't think it's one of those movies that can be remade in 2030 to go back to 1990. You know what I'm saying? Do you? But you're the expert.
So yeah, I mean, if Back to the Future were to be set in the past today, it would be 1995, which
Yeah.
doesn't
Oh my
really feel
gosh,
like that
don't
long
even
ago,
say
right?
That's blasphemy.
But for me, yeah, the Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, who created this franchise, they actually said over their dead bodies, will there ever be another Back to the Future movie or series? I think you could do it. You could do it, but should you? Should you? That's the question. Could you?
How would you even cast it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no. Michael J. Fox was so.
He's
fabulous.
iconic. Yeah,
he was so
he
wonderful.
makes that. Well, we do have a question from our YouTube comments. My British computer guy says, I want to know which is his favorite of the movies.
There were 3, right?
There's 3 Back to the Futures,
Yep.
right? Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, obviously. For me, and I don't know if it's just because I'm from Texas and something about Westerns are just embedded in our DNA, but I actually love Back to the Future 3 the most, which is actually an opinion not held by many fans.
It's a very unpopular
It's
opinion,
the
Brad.
most unpopular of the 3, but you know who shares it with me? It's Christopher Lloyd. When I talked to Christopher Lloyd, who plays Doc Brown in the films, he said Part 3 was his favorite as well. So that's mine. But you know what? It changes every day. It's like asking me what my favorite food is. Like some days it's Mexican, some days it's sushi. But I love all the food. I love all the Back to the Future.
If somebody is actually listening that hasn't seen this movie,
Okay.
Congratulations.
I haven't seen
you
it.
haven't seen this
Congratulations.
movie?
You're
in for a big treat.
Back.
I wouldn't see it with Brad. He'll tell you everything that's about to happen.
Oh, by the way, my British computer guy says no to your movie 3.
Then he's not my British computer guy.
Okay, how are you? What's your elevator pitch? Why should Celeste see this movie tonight?
Why should you see it tonight? Because it hits on all the universal themes. It's time travel, it's fantasy, it's sci-fi, it's romance. It is perfectly cast, perfectly directed, perfectly executed and written. And to me, it is not only the greatest film of the 80s, it's the greatest trilogy of all time, and it is on the Mount Rushmore of greatest films ever made.
So should I watch it, 1, 2, and 3, or is it
If
a
you want to
Star
do it
Wars kind
properly,
of thing?
if you
where
want
I
to do
go
it the right
3,
way,
would
you watch them all in one night, so you can go on that cinematic space-time travel ride. But to me, what's great about these movies is I can pick them up wherever they are. Once you know the film, you can watch it like wherever it is in the movie.
I'm guessing they've redone the quality so that it looks like it was shot yesterday.
Yeah. But what's only interesting about that is, so the quality's gotten so good, you can see a little bit of the old age makeup like on their necks and a little bit where the wrinkles are because
funny.
it's so good. But yeah, I mean, it to me though, it just still feels fresh, even though it was 40 years ago.
By
Have
the
you
way,
ever ridden in a DeLorean?
I have.
I have too.
I
Have
have.
yes.
you?
No, I've
not
never even
even
seen the movie.
She would be like, "What's a DeLorean?" I'm not sure.
I would be like, oh, look at that car. So my British computer guy, by the way, says 2 all the way. So
2 is great. So here's what's interesting too: is Back to the Future 2 is where they actually go to the future, and the future was 2015. And when you
Yes.
look at it now, you say, okay, we don't have flying cars or hoverboards, but they did get a lot of things right. Picture in picture, paying with things with your thumbprint or your Face ID, Google Glasses. There's like a lot of small little things.
The black janitor becoming the mayor.
That
That
he
really
becomes-
that was the first social statement this really made.
Yeah, he becomes mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor Goldie Wilson.
So if somebody wants to have a conversation about this with you, where can they find out some more info?
You can follow me on all social media at Brad Gilmore, backtothefuturebook.com. Get it wherever you can. Listen to the podcast. We'll talk Back to the Future all day long.
Brad,